This is the Dream It Alive show. I'm your host, Ash Kumara, co-founder of DreamItAlive.com. We are a global community guiding you to create your dream life with visualization tools, dream boards, and personal development content. Best of all, to join our community, it's free. So check out DreamItAlive.com. Why not take the challenge and become the best version of yourself, right? Anyhow, today is an awesome show. Like always, we have awesome, amazing guests for you guys to be empowered, to be inspired, and to reach your highest potential. And today's guest is no different other than Stephanie Burns. She is a phenomenal person. Let me tell you about this, guys. There are so many people out there right now that are really trying to empower women entrepreneurs, women business owners, and people that just want to collaborate more with women in the working force. And Stephanie has actually created, in my opinion, one of the best online resources to help women entrepreneurs, business owners, and people who want to work with women in the business world to excel. And her site is called Chic CEO, and it's pretty crazy. It's actually a top 100 website for entrepreneurs by Forbes. She is a hustler of hustlers. She herself has been in Inc., Fast Company, Wall Street Journal, Fox Business, Amex Open, and she has over 50,000 people subscribed. I know her network is a lot higher than that if you include her own personal network and some of the social media stuff that they're doing. So Stephanie is going to really give a lot of great perspective, not just for women entrepreneurs, but also how to succeed in business for anybody. So without further ado, let's get Stephanie on the line. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Ash?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, why don't you give us a little background on your journey? How did you get to where you are right now with Chic CEO?
That's a great question. So I was actually in grad school, and I was getting my MBA, and this was around 2008 or so, and a lot of my girlfriends were getting laid off from their jobs, just like everyone else was, right, around that time. And they kept coming up to me and asking me how to get a business started so that they could, create something on the side and pay their bills. And I had no idea what to tell them. I really had no clue why they were even asking me. And they said, well, you're getting your MBA. Are you learning how to learn, create a business? And I said, no, I'm learning how to run a business. I'm learning high-level concepts like strategic management, global marketing, econ, finance, statistics. I'm not learning how, which legal entity you should pick or how to go down to the courthouse and fill out some paperwork or, what to do in your state or save for taxes. I'm not learning any of that. So I kept getting this question over and over and over again. So finally I invited all of my friends who were asking me all of this over one night for a dinner party. And I gave them all wine and, hors d'oeuvres and started asking a bunch of questions. And, how are you saving for your taxes? And, how did you pick your brand and things like that? And none of them really had a solid answer for me. None of them had a go-to resource. And I thought, man, if there were 15 friends of mine in my living room. And I thought, if I have just 15 of my own friends just in my circle, sitting here in my living room needing this information, they're late 20s, early 30s, there's a market here, and these women are not being served. So I decided to make it my business plan for grad school. I created the business plan, graduated, and then a year later, I got laid off, just like they did, November 2009. And I went straight home, and I started working on the business plan. And then in February of 2010, I was cast to be on the Wheel of Fortune, and I won some money on the game show. And I took my game show winnings and created the site, got it built, and in December of 2010, we launched, we went live, and then by June of 2011, we were named one of the top 10 entrepreneurial websites for women by Forbes. And since then, we are now up to 72,000 subscribers in our network and a little over 100,000 total in our full network. So it's been quite the journey.
Well, a couple great things I got from that. First off, what I loved what you shared is that you are the key customer behind this. I mean, the fact that you mentioned that, hey, me and my 15 girlfriends were going through this, and hey, I realized, hey, if we are going through this, I'm sure there's other people that are going through this. I think that's so important, and I can't emphasize it enough for many of the entrepreneurs that I come about or ones that I hear about. The most successful ones are the ones, including yourself, are either the core customer or they have had substantial experience with that core customer experience. You know, I use this kind of anthem called "Build a business based on a passion, not a build on a passion, not on a trend." Building on a passion means like you have a deep connection with the end product. Building on a trend is like, oh, Facebook is out there. I'm going to go create a women's social network. Not because I'm a woman or I've worked with women. It's because I just think the women market's a lot of money could be bought. You know what I'm trying to say?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I would even extend that thought into build a business on a problem. If you're lucky enough to be passionate about solving the problem, I think you've got a home run. So, you know, that's my personal take on that. I think that's great. If you're following a trend, you know, that could be fading, but you've really got to be passionate. And I would say extend that into making sure you're solving a problem.
Okay. No doubt. Well, you have built this insane community. I'm just thinking of so many questions I want to ask you based on that story you just said. You just said that, you know, total reach is over 100,000 and you've gotten, you know, this amazing recognition from, you know, Forbes and other people. You know, for the people out there that are building their dream business, people out there that are just getting their feet wet, I mean, what are some initial kind of hustle type things you got to do? I mean, assume that the person doesn't have much money, assume the person or team doesn't have, you know, some of the press contacts or has had that Wheel of Fortune moment that you had. How do they get themselves noticed? Because I feel that as an early stage entrepreneur building your dream business, being relevant is one of the most important things. I mean, how do you become relevant? How do you be considered worth caring for from a customer perspective?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the thing about that is we never had a dime to spend on marketing. We were completely unknown when we got started. Forbes somehow found us 6 months after we launched, which was very lucky for us. But on the same hand, too, we really, really hustled in the beginning, and I still do to this day, because we've had only organic growth. So my story is very similar to anybody that is starting out and has zero press contacts or any high-level way of getting noticed. So we do some things internally that we call bootstrapping, getting really scrappy while you're bootstrapping. So we do all sorts of things. I tried to find press using things like Haro, Help a Reporter Out. And I'm sure do you know Haro?
I'm very familiar with Haro, but why don't you walk us through to the audience?
Sure. So Haro is Help a Reporter Out. It's a service Peter Shankman started, and it basically gives you 3 emails a day that has queries from journalists that are looking for people who might need sources that you can cover for them. And I think 3 months after Chic CEO launched, I found a query that asked if there were MBA students who had started a business and then went back to work, which at the time I had done. I started Chic CEO, and then I had gotten a full-time job so that I could sustain myself while this was getting off the ground. So it was a perfect fit, but it was for the Wall Street Journal. So of course, I plugged Chic CEO like mad. And then, you know, when the Wall Street Journal came out, it was really a piece about MBA students, but Chic CEO was in the Wall Street Journal. And, you know, using all of those different types of scrappy ways, we do things called stalking with excellence. So I have my team basically follow and learn and get engaged with other people in our industry or vertical that we think are influential and want to start conversations with, and we do that via social media. I have my logo and website everywhere. It's on my computer. It's on my phone case. I wear a little jacket.
Do you have a tattoo
and
of it?
That sounds...
Just kidding.
Eventually. You know. And my former business partner and I, we had a pact that if we flew anywhere, that we would wear our Chic CEO jackets, because there's such a cross-section of people in the airports that would get exposed to our web address. You know, little things like that. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but little things like that. We were networking 3 to 4 nights a week, the two of us, whether it be together or separate, hitting almost every networking event that we could find in San Diego for pretty much the first 2 years. And that's a lot of time. And, you know, a lot of people may not recommend that, but it really solidified our network here in San Diego, which led to speaking opportunities, and led to more press opportunities. They eventually pay off. So yeah, just getting out there and hustling, talking about your business, getting every press interview that you can, and really trying to move the needle, because you will. The more you work it, the more it'll happen, for sure.
You know, one of the things that I'm loving from this conversation is you're a master of self-branding, whether you like it or not. I'm giving you that positive label. And I personally can relate to you. I've been told by many people that, I'm a good self-promoter of entrepreneurship in general. And people ask me, like, how did you get to where you are? What's some of the things I've been able to do? And it's like, I don't have some extraordinary PR budget, nor have I'm not born from royal blood. I mean, I just hustled and get myself out there. But the thing I would say is that the thing that I've done is that I've found press and I found exposure opportunities where I can showcase my own expertise in certain areas. Like, I am the elevator pitch guy, or I'm the guy who understands entrepreneurship trends, or on the self-help world, I understand visualization and goal setting as good as anybody. And I make it an effort to make sure that there's press opportunities where I can share that. For you, how did you find the areas that you developed this self-branding expertise in? Because it's not like you just got picked up by these people. Oh, she's an entrepreneur, she's doing something cool. There must have been some certain things that you are really good at that you found early on that you wanted to amplify more in your press and other stuff. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I think if we really dissect personal branding, especially for me, I really haven't been focusing on my own personal brand until this year, which one of my lead advisors on my advisory board finally convinced me I needed to really start to work on. When I first started Chic CEO, you couldn't even find a picture of me on the site, which was very deliberate. I wanted the company to stand on its own two legs. I wanted it to be known as its own entity, so that in the future, if I ever wanted to sell it or pass it off, that the brand wouldn't be hurt. But in that, what I noticed, the more I did insert myself and my own personal brand into Chic CEO, the better things would be, the better engagement I got, the better revenues we had, the more subscribers we got. So once I started to actually start measuring that, then that's when I started really focusing on my personal brand. I used to work for a branding agency here in San Diego called Bulldog Drummond, and we used to do a lot of really great branding projects with companies like Adidas, Pinkberry, CMT, those kinds of things. So I did learn some branding tricks along the way, but really what it comes down to, and for me, was when you're branding yourself personally, it can be an ego issue internally, whether you feel like you should be doing it or you feel like you shouldn't be doing it, whether you feel like a fraud or you don't feel like a fraud. And if you really take your ego out of it, whether you feel like you might be embarrassed or you might be arrogant, either way, and focus on the benefit of what awareness to your company will be, it makes it much easier, because it's not easy to go into a networking event. It's not easy to go and talk about yourself or talk about your company. But if you really look at it through the lens of the more people that know about Chic CEO, the more people I can help in terms of starting their business and really following their entrepreneurial dreams. So I had to set aside this fear of looking like a fool or being embarrassed in any way, shape, or form to, really provide the benefit of what we've built to other people. And that's really where my personal brand started. And once, because I believe that there's a fear there for people when they want to start their brand, is how will this make me look?
Yeah.
And do I really truly have the expertise to be out there? So in terms of personal brand, I think we have to get over that first and foremost. But then tactically, it's really about, your brand is really about almost the personality of what you're trying to convey. So when I talk to my entrepreneurs about branding, it's really who's listening and who's engaging and who's your audience. For me, it was, like you said, I'm my core customer, and it was my girlfriend. So my brand is very much targeted to them. It talks to them like I would talk to them. it looks to them like I would look to them. So it really is it's really what they're looking for and what they connect with in terms of what I'm presenting to them.
Okay. No doubt. I love what you're saying about that. I could so relate to what you're saying. And especially about when your own personal branding efforts kind of either go above or they're at the same level as your own actual business. And, one of the things I've learned, at least in that whole process, is that if you are always being referenced, like with you, if you're always like, oh, that's Stephanie, that's the Chic CEO and founder, not, Stephanie Burns outside of that, then I think self-branding it should always be done. Because here's the thing, if you're not taking that opportunity, there's 10 other people that will take that opportunity. So, I mean, there really is.
Right.
And it's really
right.
the way the world is. And it's not a bad thing. It's just there's an abundant economy out there. And if you're not going to want to embrace that abundance, then someone else should take it, So
Absolutely. And I completely agree with that. And that's basically what my advisor was telling me. He's like, it's time.
Nice.
Stephanie, now it's time.
Nice.
Like,
well, I should get some advisor shares in for giving you that same advice. Nice. No, I'm just kidding.
For sure. Yeah. But, the thing is, and you're absolutely right, if I'm not going to take that opportunity, then somebody else is. And, the opportunity was there and presented itself so many times, and it finally took a push. But that was my own internal fear and my own, thing to get over. But you're right, but the better results I saw, the more I branded myself. So if I had gotten on the horse earlier, things probably would be much further along.
Okay. I want to shift gears for a second. I want to talk about, there's a very interesting transition right now, not just with women in the corporate world, but just people in general in the corporate world. But for this purpose, let's focus on the women's side. Let's say you are a woman who's working for, let's say you have a nice corporate job, you're like a brand manager, let's say for a company like a L'Oreal, okay? And you want to get into entrepreneurship. I mean, you've been working for 5-10 years, you've learned the in and outs of how the cosmetic world goes or the fashion world more generally. And you want to take the plunge and you want to do something on your own. It could either be your own label or it can be some type of resource play like what you're kind of doing, but specifically for the fashion world. What advice would you give that individual? Let's say they haven't built their own business yet. There is that uncertainty of leaving a nice cushy job and all the perks that you get and the brand exposure and the great resume building. Like, what advice would you give that woman?
Well, first of all, I read a really interesting article not too long ago called "The Hybrid Entrepreneur," the one who has the day job and then the night business. So I think in that situation, that person should probably stick in their job for a good 6 months and really build out what they want to see. But definitely don't stay there for 2 years. In the planning stages, my biggest piece of advice always is for entrepreneurs is to just get started, because we plan and plan and plan and plan, and there's no action taken, and that can really, really magnify itself if we stay in the job too long, where we don't have the extra motivation to get hustling, and we can get mired down in the planning. So for a person like that, I would say give yourself a timeline. Stay in your job for a few months so that you can stay calm in that your bills are going to be paid, so that you can really focus and think on strategy. And then after 6 months or so, you're going to have to take the plunge and start really taking some action.
Okay.
But definitely don't get too mired down in the details, the planning.
Okay, so you're saying like big picture, work on the concept, work on like, let's say, the vision behind the business, figure out all the vendors and the partners, but don't spend like 8 hours a day on it until, it's just consuming your head. Is that what you're kind of saying?
For 2 years, yeah. So, with over 70,000 women in our network, I see this a lot. I see a lot of women that have something on the side, but they've been working for 2-3 years in their day job, and they never give themselves a chance to really take the plunge. There's got to be a transitionary period, so give yourself a deadline. If you're really going to move forward with this, let yourself stay in your job for a few months so that you can remain calm about finances and work really hard at night, and then, rip off the Band-Aid, leave the job, and really get to work.
Okay.
Don't sit in your job for 2 years just planning and not take any action.
I love it. A thing that I share with entrepreneurs is, I call it you ever heard of the compounding, where if you put in $1 one month, you put $1.25 the next month, $1.50 the next month, you're kind of compounding, and you eventually, you're familiar with that concept, kind of compounding?
Yep.
So I call it this. I call this one entrepreneur compounding. So if you spend 5 minutes today working on that business, whether it's working on the business plan or you're working on, just the vision, or you're doing research, and then the next day you do 10, the next day you do 15, the next day you do 20, next day you do 30. You're constantly compounding the amount of time you're spending on your entrepreneur dream, and I feel that if you do that, the long-term effects of that compounding will make that business come to reality faster than you know it, and at the same time, you can still keep your job and do something that pays the bills. I think a lot of people just throw in, I got to spend every night 4 to 5 hours, sleepless nights working on this till it makes sense. No, take your time. Do the compounding model. What do you think of that model?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I love that, and I love the way you explained it. I also talk about something I call it the rule of 3, where even if you don't feel like you get enough done, because, feeling like you have to work all night for, 8 hours a day and all night and all that stuff leads to burnout, is just do 3 things a day. And those 3 things will inform the next 3 things, which will inform the next 3 things, which definitely is a compounding effect. And at the end of the week, you've got 21 things, and that's wonderful. So I wholeheartely agree with that. I think that's brilliant.
Nice. Okay, well, it's great to hear some of your stature agreeing with that. I have another kind of follow-up question for the corporate person, because I just feel that there's a lot of individuals in the corporate world that really want to take this plunge in entrepreneurship. So I kind of want to focus that a little more, and then we'll jump into some audience questions. We actually have a couple awesome questions, so we might have to go a little above our airtime. I have met some people that feel that they need to get funding first before the idea comes to fruition, or that they need to do certain things before actually doing some type of execution. I mean, what's your take on all that? I mean, getting funding before the idea or getting funding after? And for the intensive purposes, let's go focus on the individual who is working, the L'Oreal example. Someone who's working for a brand like that, and they want to go take a plunge into, some type of fashion play.
Sure. So I hate to sound like an attorney here, but it really kind of all depends. I think that's their answer to everything. But for that specific example, typically, no, you're not going to look for funding before you've created your idea, or you've actually proven it or found some traction, unless you've been an entrepreneur before. If you have a track record of creating a business, selling it, or it's doing really well or something like that, you can tend to get funding right out the gate with just an idea on a piece of paper. It's really difficult to find funding if this is your first entrepreneurial endeavor, unless you have a family member that's willing to do it, or it's a friends and family play. But hardly ever are you going to find an angel investor or a VC that's going to invest in an idea when you have zero track record. So if you have zero track record, you're going to have to find funding if you need it via friends and family or your own way, or go on a game show like I did. There's lots of creative ways to get funding, but typically if it's your first go round, my advice is to do what you can in what you're in control of, because bringing on an investor or finding funding means you just found yourself a business partner, somebody that you have to answer to, somebody that you have to be held accountable to. And there's a tremendous amount of responsibility and guilt that goes along with that. So finding funding in the beginning is incredibly difficult if you don't have experience on how to spend somebody else's money wisely or running a company, because as you know, the statistics of companies succeeding is very small. So my advice would be to do what you can under your control until you get to a point where you cannot grow unless you have funding. And then by that point, you have some traction behind you. But I wouldn't say go out and find funding right away.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's cool. What if you have access to contacts? What if you are, let's say you're working and you've built a Rolodex, or you have some rich friends that get what you're doing, or rich investor contacts? How would you caution them to take that investment? Because I've read, at least, and I've seen personally, that sometimes, just because you have money in front of you doesn't mean you should, from a long-term perspective, you shouldn't try to get too much money, because you might dilute yourself significantly even before you launch your product. I mean, what's your take on that, the other side?
Yeah, that's really difficult. I have a very dear friend of mine who did the same thing. He took too much money, and the investors ended up basically handing him a check for $10,000 and saying, "You're out. We voted you out. Here's $10,000. You're out." Wow. And last year the company made $52 million.
Wow.
He started the company. So again, funding is tricky. If somebody presents you with funding, that's awesome. It doesn't mean that you need it all right away. So take only what you need if it's there, and then set up the parameters with your investor on how you're going to spend it and what return you expect to see. If you're working full time, say the example that you just gave me, if you're working full time and somebody says, I have money for you to get this started, what you have to be really honest with yourself and your investor is that part of that investment is going to have to go to your salary. And a good investor will always invest enough to have you take home a salary, and not just a crappy salary, but one that will sustain you and your family in the manner that you are accustomed to, or is fair for where you live and what you do. Because no investor wants their CEO to be stressed out, pulling side jobs, working during the day, working all night. Otherwise, their investment is into somebody who is too stressed out and too tired to actually run the company. So if you're working full time and there's an investor that is interested in helping you pursue your idea, they need to know, and you need to know if they're okay with part of that investment going to your salary, so that you can actually effectively run the company and utilize their investment to get them a return.
Okay, well, that's fair. One last question on this whole subject matter, and then we're going to dive into some audience questions. What's your take on globalization? Like, if you have a business and you want to go launch it, let's say some country in Asia, and you're based out here, I mean, what's been your advice, or what is your community share for, people that want to do more globalized type businesses? Or I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, globalization type businesses.
Well, that's the beauty of the internet, Just this morning I was on the phone with somebody in Russia, and a couple weeks ago I was on the phone with somebody in Costa Rica, and another one in England. So I think that with the internet, we're seeing a lot more of globalization in what we're doing. But it really depends on what you're doing. I think the easiest way to get started in another country is via the internet. Product-wise, or brick and mortar is probably going to be much more difficult in terms of regulation and taxing and those kinds of things. But if you're online, I think that the world is just getting smaller.
Okay, very cool. Well, we have some questions from our audience, so let's dive into it. The first question is from Megan, and Megan wanted to ask you, hey, Stephanie, big fan of what you're all about. I've actually been checking out the site ever since DreamItAlive was promoting this interview. Really glad to be part of it. My question to you is what is your thoughts on women getting venture capital? I've been reading reports that it's hard, but I want to stick with my business and I don't want to follow the trends. I just want to build a meaningful product, get the funding needed, and take off. What's your take?
Well, a few things. I work with some private clients right now, and one of my clients just got $1 million in funding last week from a venture capital firm. So it's not that it's impossible. The numbers are very disparaging. I think it's somewhere between 4 and 9% of all female-owned companies being venture-backed. The upside in that, and what I believe, is that just means we have a bigger opportunity to ask. We aren't effectively asking as female owners. So in order to try to get these numbers up to a 50-50 range, we have to really start going out there and asking for it. I think that, obviously the investor pool is very, very heavily flooded with men. I think that women need to get out there. We need to become investors, and we need to invest in ourselves, and we need to ask for investment. So my advice to you, Megan, is to go out and take action and ask for what you need. Ask for the money that you need. Show the kind of return that you are looking for or looking to get for your investors, and what you're going to do with this money and how it's going to scale your business. There's lots of different, I don't know how big your business is. You may not even need venture capital. You might only need angel funding at this point. So venture is for super big, investments, and typically if you're looking for 10 times over return. And then angel investors are really there to help you grow early stage and provide their expertise. So keep asking, keep going after it. Eventually somebody will believe in your product the way you do. And I believe that as women, we just have to keep asking for it. I think men want to invest in us. We just have to ask.
Okay, cool. Great answer. Neil has a question. Hey, Stephanie, what are your thoughts on for 2015, which business ventures do you see more women, whether it's a brick and mortar or a startup type of trend you see more of? So I guess what he's asking is, what are some industries or types of businesses you feel that more women are going to either help create or be involved with from an entrepreneur standpoint in 2015? Again, this is just based off of your own views and your community's views. I understand it's speculative.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of women starting lifestyle businesses.
What's a lifestyle
they're just
business?
the easiest. Anything that can bring in, $50,000 a year to $300,000 a year is typically a lifestyle business. One employee, maybe 1 to 2 employees, and it's typically service-based. And I think the reason for that is because we get, saddled down with a lot of responsibilities and other things that we want to do in our lives that prevent us from going into super high growth businesses. Not that women don't. For example, my client that I was just telling you about last week, who just got her first $1 million in funding. She's got a husband and 2 kids. She's on a very, very fast track. But the majority of the women that I see are falling into coaching, lifestyle or life coaching, weight loss coaching, business coaching. And so that seems to be the new trend I see in what women are going into. But again, they span the gamut. And Chic CEO, we really cater to anybody, not just women in tech, not just women in DIY, but any woman that's looking to start a business. But that's where I see the biggest trend is kind of lifestyle coaching businesses right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to dive a little deeper into that because you're kind of diving into my world at DreamItAlive.com. We work with many awesome self-help coaches, wellness people, and we're just kind of attuned. What are some coaching specifics that you see are going to be more and more popular for 2015? Like, what are some areas you think you're going to see more coaches being hired for?
Whew, that's a good question. Well, we're coming up on New Year's, so we're going to see a lot of weight loss and health pop up.
Okay.
But I think, I think everybody wants to make a mark in their world, and I think everybody wants to give back and help, and that's a collective movement. Consciously, I think that we're all trying to evolve and get better and help each other get better. So that's where I really see a lot of people wanting to help each other find their purpose and their passion and really evolve themselves in order to make the world better. I'm seeing a lot of people start foundations and nonprofits and things like that, but it's this collective movement of us becoming better people, getting spiritually better, mentally better, physically better. Yeah, that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing in terms of that, is just in coaching, just betterment.
Okay.
In all aspects, I guess.
Betterment.
Yeah.
Well, I totally can relate to you about the New Year's resolutions. At least even with DreamItAlive.com, we probably see the biggest increase in our membership from a new acquisition standpoint around the New Year's resolution time, because everyone wants to build goals, whether it's visual or written, to overcome for what they can do for 2015. Like, these are my New Year's resolutions and things like that. So you're actually preaching to the choir. I totally relate to you on that. The last question I got from Brad is, what is the next steps for Chic CEO? Where do you see yourself going for 2015 and beyond?
Well, that's a great question. I'm working on a lot of really exciting things right now. I'm launching my podcast in a couple weeks. It launches on December 1st, and it's called Top 3. And I talked to entrepreneurs about the top 3 tips they have for us in their specific industry. So I've interviewed Amanda Steinberg, the founder of Daily Worth, about her top 3 tips for money tips for female entrepreneurs. I've talked to Manish Sethi, who founded Hack the System, and most recently Padlock, about top 3 tips for changing habits. John Lee Dumas, founder of Entrepreneur on Fire, top 3 tips for starting a podcast. Pat Flynn, top 3 tips for creating passive income. So it's a really, really cool podcast. I'm really excited about it. And that launches December 1st. And then I'm working on a book called My Favorite Mistake, with another woman here in San Diego who started Bear Mixers, and we are interviewing founders about what their biggest mistake was and how that turned into their biggest blessing. And those are the kind of the things that I'm working on for next year. Again, that does fall into my personal brand. I think that Chic CEO has built a good foundation for women who want to get a business started, and as we've grown into our business, we have attracted and maintained a level of other women who are now in their 4th or 5th year of business. So the business is evolving with them in the toddler years of what we're doing. So it's fun to start to create content and programs for growing your business, not just starting. So that's been a fun journey, and I think that's probably the next evolution for Chic CEO and for me.
Okay. Well, that's awesome, and I cannot wait to hear your podcast. I'm definitely going to be one of your first subscribers. Some of those guests sound pretty awesome.
Very fun, really fun. I'm actually I'm going to interview James Altucher in a couple of weeks too, who is probably the number one person I've been wanting to talk to. So I'm a little starstruck right now that he actually said yes. So yeah, it's going to be a great podcast. I'm really excited for it.
Awesome. Well, on that note, thank you so much again for being on the show, and keep up the good work. Keep inspiring people. I cannot wait to see the awesomeness and growth that Chic CEO is going to have in 2015 and beyond. And we're looking forward to watching this thrive into something even bigger and badder than what it is.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And, right back at you. Keep up the good work with Dream It Alive. I love it, and I think it's amazing, and I love what you guys do, and I'm really thankful that you had me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Well, you have a great day.
You too, Ash. Have a good day.